Hello, everybody. As always, it's great to be with you. I'm going to talk today a little bit about questioning the ultimate authority, looking into whether or not your spiritual path has actually become a dead end. And I tried to do a video on this. I did a video on this a couple of weeks ago, but after a day or two, I wasn't happy with it. I took it down before, I don't know, not more than about 100 or so people had seen it. So this is going to be a second attempt to go at this, and there's another attempt at addressing this as well, which is that I have a text post. I have a written post on this on awakeningclaritynow.com. But I wanted to do a video version because I wanted to speak to you really personally on this thing. It's a big deal because we hear so much about in non-duality that we should be questioning our own. I mean, we should be questioning authority. That we hear a lot about this. Be your own authority. Don't listen to books. Don't listen to teachers, and don't listen to this and that and the other, and just or you can listen to those, but don't pay them too much mind. Always go by your own authority, and I appreciate that. It's along the lines of what I did, but ultimately, what I had to do was I had to question that ultimate authority, which was me. Because I had become the guy who knew what I was doing, and I had become the guy who understood the path, and I was the guy who knew when somebody had it right and somebody had it wrong, and I knew what was most likely to bring me to awakening and all this crap, and as long as I held on to all that stuff, I noticed I did not awaken. And the longer we're involved in any single spiritual path, the more likely it is that we are going to become adhered to that path, so that we're going to be invested in it, and we can become very invested in some of these things, particularly where there's a charismatic guru or something like this, and we get deeply involved in that whole community. We get deeply involved in that teaching, and there's nothing innately wrong with that, provided people are waking up. God, isn't that the kicker? If there are people around you who are waking up, then that and that's a good thing, particularly if you know them. And if people who perhaps came into this movement with you at about the same time, they're waking up and you aren't, then that you got a little issue there. But if that maybe you need to adjust, maybe you do need something new. You could still question your own authority about whether this is really the path for you, because there are paths that are good for some people that are certainly not good for all people. If that wasn't true, then in Hinduism they wouldn't have bhakti yoga, karma yoga, and jnana yoga, and then what's the Raja Yoga, which is some kind of like a culmination of all three, which is pretty much what all of them are. Because you kind of got to mess with all of them in order to really get where you're going. For most of us, not for all of us, but for most of us. And actually, this teaching would be more in line with jnana yoga, intellectual, coming to understand this through intellectual means, but beyond intellectual means. Don't be fooled. So it's but we don't want to play down intellectualism. I mean, my God, it's where we almost all start. But I'm going to get off track. God Almighty, I always do that. So what we're trying to talk about now is questioning your own authority, particularly if you have been on a single path for a long period of time. And I'll tell you why I'm particularly keen on this, is that I've worked with lots and lots and lots of people particularly in the last 18 months. And I've had a lot of success with a lot of people. And that's not to promote me, it's just to tell you the truth. So, but what I have noticed is that the people who have been the most strongly invested in a single tradition, no matter what that tradition is, tend to be the least likely to, let's just say, let's not put it that way. Let's just say that they tend to be the most likely to be heavily invested in community, in the charisma of the guru, of the charm of the path, maybe the side benefits, like, who knows? I mean, I'm just throwing stuff out there, like, special clothes, special names, things like that. We can get really where we like that a lot. And there's nothing wrong and nothing innately wrong with that. I'm just saying that if it's interfering with your awakening, check your teaching. Here we go. Bottom line, check your teaching. Check your path. Check what you're doing. Is it actually working on a large scale? Because here's what I want to promise to you, is that, and it's not just from me, this is from other people as well, like people who are friends of mine, is that this awakening thing is real, and it's available, and it's doable. And if you're not finding it, if you've been on this path for a long, long time and you're not finding it, better take a good look at that path, because either you or the path one, there's just not a mix there. See, it might be a mix socially, might be a mix, like bhakti and all the yoga of devotion and lots of that, but maybe it's not actually working, and if we've had, like, a glimpse here and a glimpse there or something like that, then depends on how long we've been in it. If you've been in this thing for a couple of years and you've had a glimpse or two, I mean, that's doing real good. If you've been in this thing 5 years and you've had a glimpse or two, that ain't so hot. If you've been in this thing 30 or 40 years or 20 years and you had a glimpse or two or nothing, that ain't so hot. But what I'm telling you is that there's other stuff that you could be doing. Now, I don't know. You may not be willing to wake up. It may not be your teaching's fault. I have people sometimes that I get with who are unwilling to wake up. And I had someone the other day, that the first time ever in my career, who I felt like really might not be able to wake up. Not just the unwillingness there was certainly unwillingness present, but it was so great that my feeling was that I just knew I could not help her. It was the first time ever that I cut a session off midway through just to save her some money. I'm not, I certainly have to make a living, but I'm not in this to clip anybody. So if I don't believe I can help you, I'm going to bow out early. But I've only had to do that once. There are a couple of other times I should have done it, but my ego at that time wouldn't let me, because I thought I can get everybody, and I can't get everybody. I can get who I can get, and that's only because they're in the right place. So if they're not in the right place, there's really nothing I can do. But fortunately, most of you who find your way to this website, to this video, are actually in good shape. So I will tell you that the single exception to this long-term path thing that I can really think of, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to single anybody out for good things or bad. I'm just going to say, in general, the people who have tried a lot of things, as dangerous as that is, when I say dangerous, I mean, if you want to dig a well and you want to find water and you dig a bunch of shallow holes, you're really not going to be that successful with it. You got to kind of dig one well really deep, or it's a good idea to give that a try. I did that with Eckhart Tolle. I've talked about it before. And I mean, I just absolutely wrang everything out of that little guy that I could, for 5 or so years, and 4 or 5 years, something like that. And it paid off too. And I've since gone in depth with a couple of people since, but not to that level, which was actually a little ill. But people who tried a lot of things, or people who have shifted from one path to another, even if it's just 1 or 2 or 3 things, they tend to have a more openness about them, because once we get in this thing and we've decided we know what's true, because now we're in with the in group and they know what's going on, and they're the ones who are right, and we can get really caught up in that. And the other thing to be real careful about, as long as I'm on this subject, because this can come out of teachings. As a matter of fact, I would say it generally does come out of a lot of teachings, which is they'll tell you what enlightenment is like and what it's about and how it happens, and in specific ways, not in general ways. I do that all the time in general ways, and afterwards I may even talk to people about it in specific ways, but I'm not going to do it beforehand, because I don't want to give you too much ammunition, because what you'll do is you'll take that ammunition and you'll shoot yourself with it. People do it all the time. Because when, for instance, just in my practice, when somebody comes to me, it's just, we remember the old Zen story about the glass, about the full glass and the empty glass. The guy comes to the Zen teacher, and he's got his, was actually a cup. Guy comes to the Zen master and says, I want you to teach me all about Zen. And the Zen master says, okay, I will see about that. And he starts rattling off, and I want to know about this and this and this and this. And meanwhile, the Zen master is pouring tea. And he's pouring tea right in the cup there. And what happens is that he fills up the cup, but he keeps on going. He just starts pouring. I've actually done this too. It will get somebody's attention, and the tea starts to pour out all over the tray. And the guy goes, hey, stop. You can't get any more in that glass. And the teacher says, and that's the same thing that I find with you, is that you come to me and you're already full, and I've got no place to put anything. And that in the cases where I cannot wake anybody, where I cannot wake someone up, where I can't find that 51% that I need to in order to be able to really pull them over the edge, typically it's just because they're too full. They already got their own concepts. They've already got their own ideas. I have had people wake up and then had them back away for it, sometimes before the end of the session. And that, again, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Used to happen more often than it does, because I just wasn't quite as good with this, a year or two ago as I am now. So, consciousness hadn't done as much work with me. I have to be very careful not to take credit on any of this stuff, because I have no idea how to wake anybody up. None. What I do know is that if I go into, either come to the computer and talk to somebody on Skype, or go into my living room and talk to somebody there, that very frequently awakening happens. Most of the time awakening happens, but I certainly don't know how. And I certainly don't do this. It just happens if you're in the right place. So it's about your being in the right place that I'm trying to talk about today, is to just please be open, because the ultimate authority that you're really, the one you really, really listen to is you. And if you're saying, this is my path, and it's a blind alley, and you're saying, this is not my path, and everybody is waking up who's going through, or lots and lots of people are waking up who are going through that path, then for God's sake, switch paths. You don't have to come to me, but switch paths. And, just don't be married to your path. Don't be married to your guru. Don't be married to your guru. That's not your job. Your job is not to marry your guru. Your job is to help your guru wake you up. And if you are in a position where you can do that, do it. And if they can wake you up, great. And if they can't, go find another teacher. Don't follow these people for just not because they're not good teachers, not because they're not authentic teachers. They may be, they may not be too, but they may be. But you obviously can't hear them. You're missing something, and you need something new. And hey, come to me. Now I will do a promo. But do something. But don't get sold on your own stuff so much, please. Remain at least a half full cup. Leave some space there so that something new can come in, because that's obviously what you need. If you've been in this thing for a long time and you're not awake, obviously you need something new. That's what I sometimes tell people, is they'll come in here and they'll start trying to run the session, and I'll say, let me ask you this. Other than, prior to this awakening session, how many have you done? They'll say none. I said, I've done about 500. Which one of us do you think we ought to be listening to? And I really do that just to cut their legs out from underneath them. I got to kick ego, and it doesn't mean it's not anything personal about with the person. It's just I've got to kick that ego out of there, because that ego wants to be in control. Especially, I do a lot of work with a lot of spiritual teachers and life coaches and stuff like this, and also and clinical psychologists and psychiatrists stuff. All of these people are used to being in my chair. They're used to being in the control chair, whatever. And it can't work that way here. I can't let them run it because it won't work. I really wouldn't care if they'd pay me the money. I'd be glad to show up and listen to them. But it won't wake them up. If they could wake themselves up, they wouldn't need me. But the ego can't see that. So I can see that we're going to get off into a conversation about me if I'm not careful. God almighty. This is a hopeless unit, isn't it? Man, oh man. Well, at any rate, I hope I've enjoyed the chat. I hope we've done you some good. See you later. Bye-bye.